What is learning and why we need learning outcomes? You may have heard that learning is a change in behaviour. You haven't learnt a thing until you take action and use it. What does this mean? When we want learning to take place, we must think about what behavioural change we are trying to bring. Let's illustrate this with a few examples. If we are trying to teach a child to add fractions, then the change in behaviour we are seeking will be that they can add fractions. Similarly, if you are trying to help a child identify shapes, the change in behaviour or learning is that they can now identify shapes. A last example is if you are trying to help a child memorise capital cities, then the change in behaviour you are seeking is that they can now name the capitals in some countries. What this means is that before we teach, we should focus on what outcome, behaviour, we are trying to achieve. How does identifying the change in behaviour we are trying to achieve help us? Well, if we know what behaviour we are seeking, we can more easily measure how successful learning has been. For example, can the child now add fractions or list the capital cities of some countries or identify shapes? If the answer is yes, then we have been successful. Learning outcomes and learning. Learning outcomes are new behaviours you want to observe at the end of the session. What is it they cannot do now that they will be able to do after your session together? Can the children now list, explain, add, draw, recite? Did you notice how learning outcomes are always action verbs? So our first top tip is, before you set out to teach anything, identify and list your learning outcomes.
Join us for our next video in which we talk about the different ways in which children learn.